Alright, gonna make a quick video here, show you some settings on the dash ESC. This is for the 8 scale, and just cover some basic setup stuff for 8 scale buggies, and it's applicable for the 8 scale truggies. So this is the dash AI 8 scale speed control. It's in the Serpent SRX8 E-Buggy, a 1900 kV motor, and the matching speed control. So we go through here. This is the programming box. It's a must-have. You have to have it. And we're going to go through some settings here. So the firmware, there are no new updates. Generally, I run the blinky mode. Pretty simple. Usually here in the Southwest region, blinky is not a thing. You can run timing and boost and all that. So saved, and so all you got to do is press this left button menu to go through the settings. So punch is a big one. Here down in the Southwest, there's a lot of heat, and you'll start out at 90 over 100 degrees just because the ambient temperature outside on the outdoor tracks. And as you can see, I'm not running a motor fan, but that's one of the ways you can control your temperatures is by reducing your punch. So next thing, pulse width modulated. This is for the throttle. The higher the frequency, the more heat the speed control and motor will build up through your run. So generally, the higher settings are smoother and will result in a higher top speed, but will generate a lot more heat. You also want to adjust your pulse width according to your pinion. So if you're running a shorter or smaller track for 8 scale, like on a 10 scale track, but you're running an 8 scale, you generally want to gear down. So I currently have a 15 tooth pinion, and that's good for small to medium sized tracks. If you're running a bigger like nitro sized track, an actual real 8 scale track, then you'll want to run a 16 tooth pinion. But 4K is a good all around setting. Compress. So in other speed controls, this is considered like your exponential. So if you're at the lowest setting, so 1, it is very curved. It's very slow to come on throttle, has a very gentle curve. And then if you go to 30, then it is the opposite. It's very sensitive off the bottom. 15 is a linear throttle. So I like to do all my speed control settings on the speed control instead of the radio. I think it just feels a little bit better, and it gives you like the actual restrictions. You're not going to have any issues with the radio or potential double tuning. Brake frequency, it's the opposite of the throttle frequency. The higher, the smoother your braking is. If you run it lower, it'll be more clunky, more aggressive, possibly less controlled. You put a lot of strain on your drivetrain with the lower brake frequencies, just because of almost like the opposite of punch. It just slows it down. The motor speed changes a lot more aggressively than with a higher frequency. So 8K is usually pretty good, real smooth. If you're running a looser track, loamier track, you want to run a higher frequency. And if you're running a more aggressive track, with more high bite, you can usually run a little bit lower brake frequency. You can kind of consider it as like how smooth the brakes come on. So the brake range, this is essentially like your initial, or how wide of your initial brake do you want it to be. So if you run it shorter or smaller, like 1 or 2, your brake is very smooth just for a little bit. If you have it higher, like at setting 20, it's very smooth for a longer time, for a longer brake range. Initial brake, this is how big that initial brake is, right? You're coming off the throttle, you're transitioning from zero throttle to neutral to brake. This is like the percentage that it's going to hit with. A higher amount is a higher, we'll call it brake hit, and a softer amount or a smaller amount is a softer hit. This is very important and kind of aligns with your brake frequency. So if you have a real high brake frequency and a real hard initial brake setting, like a higher percentage, then it'll like hit really, really hard but smooth. If you have a really high initial brake and a really low frequency, then it'll just hit really, really hard, almost like locking the brakes. You can use this for adjusting, you know, your throttle and your brake action when you're in the air and when you're coming off of jumps. Brake feel, this aligns with the previous setting. You kind of want it to be a high frequency, a high brake feel, a high initial or a low initial. So high brake feel, high initial, and high frequency will make it a very, very smooth brake. Almost feel like there's no brakes. So you have to work all the settings together. Max brake force, same thing. This is part of that, how hard it's going to hit. So it's like essentially as if you're on your radio, you need turned it down from 100 to 62.5. So I adjust it here. Some people like to start at 100 and then use the radio. What I'll do is I'll set it to like 75 and then use my radio. If it's still too much, down on the radio, and then adjust it accordingly. Like if I took out 10% from 75, that's 7.5. So I'd try and take it to 67.5. This would be the next closest, 62.5. So the maximum brake force is generally going to be lower. You don't need that much brake. Drag brake, this is kind of self-explanatory. This is when you are, you know, on the straight, you let off the throttle, you're in neutral, you're not on the brake and you're not on the throttle. This is how much resistance it's going to put into the drivetrain. Running mode, so this is generally for racing, you only have forward and brake. That's what that setting is. The cutoff voltage, this is for your battery. Generally 8 scale, you run in 4S. Your cutoff voltage auto, just let the speed control make sure you're not smoking your batteries. I leave it on auto. You can adjust it to lower or higher, but this is how I get the most out of my batteries and the speed control is by letting it, you know, use its own algorithms. Overheat. So this, I'm running a little bit hotter. This is just to make sure I got through the main, but a good general setting is 105. That's the default. It's a good setting. If you get that hot and you slow down and it cuts the throttle, cuts the power, you are hot. Your motor's probably 180, 175, really, really hot. So 105 is more than enough. We'll just save that setting. Neutral range, this is as small as it goes. This is how big the range is from throttle to brake. So if you just let the trigger go, this is how wide essentially that's going to be. Battery elimination circuit, essentially how much power is going to your receiver and your servo and transponder and any other accessories running off of your receiver. I run 7.4, my servos can handle it, and the receiver can handle it. Motor rotation, counterclockwise. So this is a normal setting. So the E-Buggy, the Serpent E-Buggy, Serpent E-Truggy, the differentials are installed opposite of what the nitro cars are. So if you want to keep all your diffs installed the same way, you just change this to to clockwise, and you can just install all your diffs the exact same way, and it won't matter, and the motor will spin the other way, and forward will still be forward. So that's what this setting is. I run it normal because I have the differentials flipped and installed just like the manual says. Max power, again, this is very, very important for your temperatures. Modern 4S batteries, speed controls, motors are very powerful. And at 100% power, you will smoke your motor, smoke your speed control. You can have plenty of power. If you go to a bigger track, you just need to change your pinion. That's more than enough power. A 1900 kV with a 4S 75 will get you on anything. And we're back to A1, the punch. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment. I can answer them. Big takeaways from this: lower punch, lower temperatures, lower drive frequency, lower temperatures, lower total power, lower temperatures. You can go switch between 15 and 16 pinions based on the track size. and then keep most of your speed control settings close or the same when you're changing pinions. Again, any questions, just leave a comment and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.